Today we're going to be doing 12 tips on hosting an engaging webinar and things that I've learned along the way. So a little bit about myself. I think most of you already know me already, so I'll just cruise through this. My name is Sarah Matu. I'm the owner broker of My Broker Pro. We also have our own mortgage team, and I've just had this evolution of mortgage brokering over the last 8 years, and it's turned into marketing. So basically what my husband and I found is he was a better mortgage broker. I was a better business development / marketer side of things. So we cut our business in half and did it that way. But previous to that, when I was brokering, I actually had a lot of success in my first year being a broker. I funded exactly 100 deals, which equated to 44 million in sales in my city. I'm in a town of about 100,000, which is pretty good. But now, yeah, since we've had a family, I've shifted my focus entirely to marketing and basically helping you guys. There's lots of people on the call here that I help through the marketing company, business development, and then what I'm truly passionate about is things like this. The webinars kind of keeps me going and keeps the boring stuff more interesting. So we'll skip over that. What is a webinar? Well, a lot of you, it's kind of a buzzword, right? A lot of us are going back to the webinars and trying to work with our realtor partners and either host webinars live or in person a seminar. I've done both. Obviously, the pandemic has really pushed us into a more webinar virtual platform, right? Where we're wanting to do things from the comfort of our own home, also benefiting our users, the end user, the client, or whoever's joining our webinar, being able to join us from their couch or wherever it may be, right? So it has really opened up the doors, but both have their own place. And I want to talk about demographic a little bit on this part. So if you're doing a webinar, that's going to be great for people who want to attend virtually. It may be a younger demographic, a business one like this, if you're going to be doing like a business one about just self-employed. So really think, and we're going to talk about topics, but really think about your demographic when you're thinking webinar, web-based seminar, right? If you're doing a seminar, where we've actually had with our mortgage business a lot of luck is an older demographic. So we've hosted a seminar for first-time homebuyers and had like virtually nobody show up. And then, so that's when you sat down with it was with realtors. We sat down and we kind of brainstormed, why did people cancel? Well, one, there was a snowstorm, but two, it's first-time home buyers, it's a younger generation. They just want to join 7 o'clock. Hopefully it's like an Instagram live, right? But the older generation, when we did a retirement, like a downsizing one, we talked about HELOCs, reverse mortgages, we had 50, 60 people show up. We had like a dinner. It was awesome. Really good turnout. So when you're thinking webinar versus seminar, I really want you to encourage thinking, would I show up to this or would I want to sit on my couch? So really think about that, or you have the trial and error like I did, and you have a first-time homebuyer webinar, nobody shows up, and then you do it a different way, right? So definitely brainstorm with yourself, a business partner, or hopefully if you're doing it with a realtor, webinar versus seminar, okay? It is a great opportunity, like we mentioned here, for lead generation. We know that that's why we do it at the end of the day. We're trying to connect and meet with people. And I want to encourage you guys to think too, not just clients, if you're doing it with your realtor partner, that is a lead as well, okay? So I'm going to talk about things that I've gone through at this point. Try before you buy. If you guys know me well enough, you know that I'm extremely cheap. I don't want to pay for services. One that I've never tried and used, and if they don't have a free trial, I'm definitely not going to do it. And then what if you don't like doing webinars and you go and you buy a webinar or whatever, and it costs you $300 a month to get all the fancy things. You do your first webinar and you go, wow, I absolutely hated that. I never want to do a webinar again. So definitely try doing a webinar before you get too crazy about it. And what I'm going to say next is don't get too fancy. My very first webinar I ever did online was about how to grow your pipeline, how I went from 0 to 44 million. I had hundreds of people sign up, which is a great thing because that doesn't actually always happen. But obviously the topic, which we'll get about to next, it really hit home to mortgage brokers. But that webinar, everyone was like, what software do you use? How did you get to this and that? And I was like, I literally took your guys' emails from, I said, hey guys, I'm doing this webinar. Whoever wants to join, put your email below. If you guys were part of this webinar, you probably remember it was just an ILMB Facebook group. And I took your emails and I added you to my Google Meet. So you don't have to get fancy. You don't have to pay $300 a month for a fancy software especially when you're first getting started. You don't know if you like it. You don't want to get too fancy and have glitches or anything like that. So that's my key thing. When you're starting out, a lot of new brokers will tend to get wrapped around some of the technology that's available. And we all know there's a ton, and they never get to the webinar point because they're like, I don't have a good software and I don't have a drip campaign. And it's like, just get your first webinar out of the way, learn something, and then from there move on. Okay. So that's what those are my two biggest things that I learned. That was my most successful webinar, and I didn't even do anything. I added you guys to my email and my Google Meet. That was it. And I refreshed the invite, and that's how I did it. It was very manual. So that's what I would suggest. And then the biggest fear, I just had somebody tell me the other day, they had booked a webinar, first time homebuyer one, with their realtor, and the realtor canceled because there was only 5 people that registered. So the broker was like, I think that the realtor was, kind of disappointed about the outcome. Therefore, we canceled the webinar. Never do this. Never do this. I'm very lucky to have you guys, an engaged audience who wants to listen to me. But when it comes to doing first-time homebuyer seminars and sometimes getting the word out, it can be difficult, as we all know, right? So never cancel your webinar, especially if it's with a business partner, because if you get a lead out of that webinar, like you so happen a first-time buyer says, I have $25,000 saved. Here's my letter of employment and my T4. And I want to buy a house next week. That would be amazing. Of course, that's like the ultimate goal. But more amazing than that is you and the realtor working together and being like, hey, you know what? We did it. We recorded it. We'll edit it. We'll put it in a funnel now or do something later. And that went really well. So don't cancel it. Focus on the relationship with you and the realtor or the builder or the developer, whoever you're doing this with, accountant, and go from there. That is your main goal, guys, is connecting with, if you're doing it solo, then for sure you want an audience. But even if nobody shows up, practice, hit record, and go through your motions anyways. And then that way you've got an asset for future use that we can use in a funnel later. But the main thing, if you're co-hosting with somebody, is that connection. 100%. We did a first time seminar in person, a different one. And again, there was only 4 or 5 people, and there must have been 7 of us, like me, my husband, 3 or 4 realtors, and there was more people than there was clients. But you know what? We didn't get a single deal out of it. But the realtor, who we've known forever, ended up sending my husband so many deals after that. They cultivated a relationship that he was like, hey, I like Luke. I'm going to work with Luke. So in the end, it didn't really matter that there wasn't a huge or ready to buy audience. It was more about that relationship. Okay. And then last but not least, if nobody shows and it's a completely crickets, practice doing your webinar. A lot of you are shy in front of the camera. So there's nothing like hitting the record button, practicing, going through it and being like, where did I fumble? And go from there. Know your audience. We kind of talked about this demographic thing, and that I get again was a big trial and error for me. Okay. And you guys will experience the same thing, but knowing the audience, their pain points, their point of interest. So first-time homebuyer webinar is obviously very popular right now, but it really depends who you're going to talk to. If you're going to do, let's say, a webinar or a seminar in front of a business networking group, the first-time homebuyer seminar is great, but wouldn't it be better to talk about self-employed topics because everybody in that room so happens to be self-employed? If you're going to do it with your accountant, you'd probably fixate it to 2 years worth of taxes. So really know your audience and give them a topic that they're going to be like, hey, that's interesting, right? You can really captivate them based on what the title of your webinar is going to be versus, the interest that they might have. So we've got lots of presentations that are ready made for you guys to buy. But example, if you're like, I really want to get in front of a bunch of realtors, what we do is 8 common pitfalls that every realtor should know about that will affect their listing. So of course they want to listen. Realtors have heard the first time home buyer seminar. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but that particular topic is going to interest them more than a first time home buyer seminar. So really know your audience and pick your topic accordingly for that. And that brings us to topic we kind of already dived on. And again, there's so many, guys. Get creative. If you guys want to brainstorm with me, I'm always happy to. You know, like one of my favorites for this year is like how to kick your kids out of the house. You know, make the topic funny. More and more people, their kids have to stay home longer, right? So whether that's them buying an investment property today so that their kids have somewhere to live when they go to university and you can guarantee you kick them out by the time they're 18, doesn't that sound better than a first-time home buyer seminar? So you can make it fun and make it, obviously, like we talked about again, the audience. That would be a great seminar because you're going to get an older demographic and you can just really make it fun on different ways that they can use their home equity, refinance now to buy an investments property, or how to use their equity to do a down payment for their kiddos. And then you can guarantee they're out by 21, you know, like just do something fun like that. The realtor will love to participate in that with you because that means hopefully a purchase for them as well, right? So definitely think of different topics that are outside the box. Of course, I encourage the first time homebuyer one, but it has been used and abused. So let's, you know, try to be a little bit creative too on what you can do there. Bruised credit's really popular. We've done that with insolvency agents in the past, where the insolvency agent brings all their clients, and then from there we talk about obviously B lenders and private lenders and ways to avoid going bankrupt by refinancing and stuff like that. So definitely get creative. Think of the industry you're trying to target and what their audience's pain points are. You know, if it's a financial planner, you're probably going to want to talk about to allow them not to pull investments, use their home equity to do the purchases or pay for, you know, their retirement cost or whatever it may be. Invite the right speakers. That kind of leads us, you know, we're talking about insolvency agents, realtors. We tend to gravitate towards realtors, but there are so many out there. When I first started as a broker, every 2 weeks we did a World Financial Group presentation. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, World Financial Group. But you know what? I got a ton of deals from there. It was so awesome. They told me what topics, and again, you can be interactive with your audience. You can say, what do you guys want me to present? We always have this assumption that we know what people want to hear, but ask them, be like, what do you guys want to hear about? So they would tell me, like, we want to hear about the first time homebuyer incentive. Well, that's null and void now, but you know, back then it was. Or we want to hear about this, or we want to hear about that. And I'd be like, okay. So every 2 weeks I'd create a new presentation and go from there. And it was very effective. Again, the majority of the group were just World Financial Group people who came to their own meetings. Very rarely did their clients show up, but it cultivated a relationship with me and 17 other financial planners. That's the best, in my opinion, compared to like, nobody shows up, that's fine. I want to go and I want to integrate myself with all these other business partners, right? That's more of a long-term relationship. People, let's see here. Yeah, they want to hear you as an expert. Of course, that talks about, when we're talking about an expert as well, is like being confident in yourself. And that goes back to, you know, the no-shows and practicing and recording. They want to make sure that you present yourself as confident when you're doing this and you're not like, oh, I don't want to be here, which is the most case when we first get started. But I'm telling you guys, it does get better. Develop engaging content. And you know what's funny about this is last night, I did not have a presentation for today because I was like, I'm just going to talk because I've done enough webinars that I could probably lead the conversation that way. But then I thought, no, I should be more professional and create a presentation. So of course, if you know me, I love Canva. I went on Canva. I actually had my assistant help me, but you guys could do this easily too. This was literally a Canva template, and I gave him a link and I said, can you integrate this with the Canva link? And he did it for me. It was awesome. But in the past, I've done it myself, and Canva obviously makes it so easy. It even has an AI tool where you can say what you want your presentation to be, and it'll do like 50% of the work for you, and then you can edit it yourself. After that, change the branding colors to the branding package, and boom, you're done. You've got a professionally looking presentation, right? Which is a little bit better than just hearing me talk, and most of the time. So definitely have something for them to look at. If you're just going to be public speaking in person, then of course you might not need a presentation, but it is pretty. It's something for them to visually look at and read, and keep them engaged as well. Well, I want to go back to this point, sorry. This is important to know. We didn't really touch this at the top. At every webinar or seminar, you should always tell people what to expect. So you'll notice that at the beginning, I said, I'm going to hopefully keep this under an hour, try my best. Because in this case, these people are giving an hour of your time. I think of you guys, we're all busy professionals taking an hour of your day to listen to me. Well, I better have engaging content and something useful for you to hear if you're going to take an hour of your day to listen to me. So remember that when you're doing your presentations, keep it engaging, keep it visually appealing, and obviously what you're portraying to them is expert advice, so that, and hopefully something they haven't really heard before, so that they do give you your time, and that they're happy to refer other people to you. Like, oh, that webinar I went to about being self-employed and getting, a mortgage after using business bank statements was so awesome. They can refer to you instead of being like, oh, I was kind of like dull and dry. So just think of it that way. You are stealing an hour of their time, so keep it awesome while you're doing it. We kind of talk a little bit here, visual aids, harnessing the power of storytelling. I kind of do that naturally, but if this is something you need to remember, using experiences, buy one done, using experiences as storytelling. If you're a brand new agent, that's fine. Use somebody else's stories, a broker owner's story on, we did a refinance and we consolidated so much debt for them, and we alleviated this much cash flow, or I was able to help this person buy an investment property for their daughter to go to university. Storytelling and connecting with your audience that way is so much better than being like, you should buy an investment property because it's the right thing to do. It's like, no, I did this amazing thing and it equaled this amazing, import export kind of thing. So you definitely want to do the storytelling when you're doing your webinar, because that will keep people engaged. They'll start to listen to you instead of looking at the screen. When we did our downsizing one, I made a total joke, we've moved 14 times, and people are like, don't believe me. And I'm like, no, we've owned 10 houses. So when we were talking about moving and unpacking and your home belongings and all those personal connections, I was like, I totally get it. Every time we move, we have to move all this stuff. And I said, we've done it 14 times, and everyone just started laughing, right? So use a personal experience, use a friend's experience, whatever you can do to captivate the audience. Obviously, Canva will help with the slides and the videos and the images. I was at the Run Club yesterday, and they had a presentation, and they actually had a really beautiful video of the head leader that somebody had made. So if you've got something like that, or the realtor, especially realtors have tons of video content, definitely add that in there. Okay, we're getting to the fun stuff, choosing a software. So this is one of probably 10 million softwares out there. As you guys know, there's lots to choose out of these. And if I'm being honest, other than Zoom and Google Meet, I haven't tried any of these. So I am not your expert when it comes to, the webinar ninja or anything like that. I understand the concepts of them because I'm really big into doing research. Because I'm so cheap, I'm like, is this worth it? And I'll look into it. I'll look into the features. A lot of them have landing pages and the automations and that kind of stuff. And I'll kind of assess, do I really need this, or do I just need to get my butt in gear and do a webinar? So you can make those decisions yourself. Find a platform that obviously suits you. If you are part of our multi-tool, we'll be giving that after today. We're done creating it as of last week for today's webinar. We do have a sequence for webinars now. So I'll show you guys that in a bit, but that'll be included in the multi-tool. So hopefully you can eliminate another subscription. But again, find one that works for you. They're all slightly different, but the same, right? So Zoom is really popular. So we'll touch on it. Most of you have probably used this. It has some pretty amazing features as you upgrade. Even has some AI now for the video recordings. You can hide people who are attending your meeting. So as you can see now, you guys can see who's in my meeting. But for those who are a little bit more shy and don't want, maybe there's 3 people and you're like afraid of that being public to other people who are on the call, or for your realtor, that kind of stuff, you can hide a lot of that. And Zoom will allow you to do that. Google Meet will allow you to do that as well. So once I'm done this one, I'll share my screen. But Google Meet, when you're creating a new event, I think that's the biggest thing, is there's the ability to hide participants. So if that's important to you, do that, and just look into the features and yeah, see what's good for you. But there's 100 million out there. So this is just, you know, kind of to start. Create a custom landing page. So these are all things, guys, that you want to consider before you do a webinar. So like I said, to get started, you might just want to take email addresses and get your webinar done, right? That would be a great first use case of your first webinar. But if you're like, hey, I like doing webinars and I want to capture client emails and I want to do this and do that, then you're going to want to start looking into softwares and what's available and what you can do to really upscale your webinar. So webinar, as you guys realize when you signed up for this one, I directed you to a landing page, which is a page on my website that is dedicated to webinars. And you had to hit on that, save my seat. That is what a landing page is. It's somewhere where your client is going to land with a call to action, save my seat, in order for you to get their information, email, phone number, name, first name, last name. And then that way now you can use that data somewhere else. So yes, my webinar for you guys is free, but I collected all your information so that I can spam you later, right? So that is the purpose of us. We do this, but we do want something in return. We want email addresses and we want to know who attended our webinar. So a landing page will allow that. This is what we call a funnel, actually. So a funnel is the top of your funnel is your landing page, save my seat. Now they're engaged with you. They're in the middle of your funnel, right? Then they're going to attend your webinar. And if they attend your webinar, they're at the bottom of the funnel. You've now started getting closer to capturing an actual lead. So when you get to, yeah, it is through high level. Yeah. So through my Broker Pro. So I'll show you guys what it looks like. And we're giving everybody as part of our, like the webinar snapshot, well, everybody will get the same landing page and it's just generalized. It's not purple or anything anymore. Okay. So from there, when you get to the bottom and that person attends, like you guys today, that's like, okay, they're interested. They want to hear what you're saying. Maybe they need to buy a home or whatever that may be. So as you get closer to the bottom, that means you're getting closer to getting a lead. So that's what you're creating with the top of your funnel page. Okay. This needs to be attractive, professional looking, and that kind of stuff. So they're like, wow, they're doing a really good job. So if you went on ours, this is what ours looked like. This is just kind of a screenshot of it and here as well. So we basically replicated ours and kept a lot of the content just generic so that you can edit it on your own. And I'll open up my Broker Pro after to show you guys at the very end, but we'll get to how to host a webinar and finish all that stuff up before we move over to that. But essentially, this is what a call to action is called. We really like the timer because it's like, you need to join us now, or this is when it starts. But this is essentially your landing page, okay? So this is your first step technically in creating your webinar so that you can capture your information. Then your next page would be thank you. And then we will provide you guys with the automated sequence that says like reminder for your webinar coming up, that kind of stuff. But if you're using a different software, they should offer that as well. Like Zoom and a couple other ones they might not do the landing page, but they should at the very least offer the follow-up, like, hey, Sarah, your webinar is in 1 hour, that kind of stuff. If they don't do that, then you may want to consider something else, if especially to keep the lead interacted, make sure they show up, that kind of stuff. Okay, incorporate interactive elements. So I'm going to speak to Google Meet, but I know Zoom and a bunch of other ones do this. So in Google Meet, what we could do is called polls, breakout rooms, that kind of stuff. This is a way to be collaborative when you're doing something online. If you were doing a seminar, it would be like, my example with this would be like, who's already done a webinar? And you guys would all lift your hands. But in this case, you would prepare in Google Meet, you can prepare them in advance, and then you just hit launch, which is what I'm going to do. And my question is simple. It should pop up on all your guys' screens. Show everyone the results. Yeah, there you go. And then I hit launch. And then hopefully one of you guys tell me if you do see it to this point. Do you guys see the poll? No? Okay. That's another tip then. Prepare for technical glitches. So let's see where, if I stop presenting, maybe if you guys can see it.
I see it, Sarah. It popped up at the bottom right corner of the.
Perfect. Thanks, Jim. So bottom right corner, everyone, to see the poll. Go from there. And this, would be a great way. Do you currently own a home? Do you have any kids that need to move out? Do you have, you don't want to ask too personal, like, do you have a mortgage? So obviously consider the type of question that you're asking. But this is something in Google Meet, anyways, you can prepare in advance. So for me, what I did before the meeting, and you can have multiple ones, is I just said, have you done a webinar? Yes, no. You can obviously get creative with your answers or have multiple. And then there's a button that says hit launch. I hit launch, and then as Jim pointed out, it showed up at the bottom. And then now we can see there's 5 votes yes, 3 votes no. Okay, so from there, obviously I can end the poll and delete it if I wanted to. And if I had multiple, I can obviously go through that. But this is what it means by being interactive with your audience. So let me go back to my presentation. But you definitely want to do that once in a while to break it up. I've been on a couple webinars. Personally, I haven't used the interaction tool a ton because I have a hard time limiting my webinars to an hour because I talk so much. But I have been a part of a few that actually are really good with the breakout rooms, which is something I'd love to explore more. To be like, okay, guys, everybody break out and get back to me with your best webinar topic that is not first-time homebuyer. We're not going to do that today. I won't force you guys to do that today, but that would be an example of a breakout room. We utilize that lots in coaching calls as well. Okay, everyone, we're going to do this breakout. You can actually set who's going to be in what room, what the rooms are called, and go from there. So that is the Google Meet, because like I said, I haven't explored a ton of options. If you use Google Meet is awesome. I don't really see a reason why you would need anything else. But again, that's a personal decision. In Google Meet, I'll go back as well. It's not interactive, but always hit record. Always, always, always record. And from there, that way you can repurpose the content and use it on your social media. If we create a funnel to capture leads after you've done it, you can use that video to be like, hey, to access my webinar, click, give me your email, and I'll send you the link to my webinar. So you definitely want to record them. When you get really good at your webinar, you can actually do one that it's not through us, but there's other softwares out there that'll do like on-demand webinars. So if the client's like all of a sudden interested a bit, oh, we actually have a webinar starting in 10 minutes. Would you like to join? And it would force them to your recorded webinar. And it looks like you're there. So you'll obviously want to be somebody handling the chat part of it. But that is a really cool and effective way to repurpose content. I know BRX and a couple of people do that. Promoting effectively. This is probably the hardest part, especially as a broker. Like, how do we get our audience to join us, our key avatar that we want to work with to join our stuff? Obviously, social media is great. If you're working with a realtor partner, I'd obviously recommend a little bit of ad spend to get some people to join. When we do a joint seminar in person, we typically do an ad spend with our realtor, and we've had some good success with that. From there, you can promote via email, website promotions, and collaboration with influencers. Obviously, I'm not talking like Instagram micro influencers, which you can do, but influencers being even like your accountant, your financial planner. Like I said, like when I did the one with the insolvency agent, I didn't invite anybody. We had the idea to do it together, but he was like, I'll invite my audience. Well, that's way better than ad spend, right? You talk to that you probably like to see. Yeah, we'll definitely get to that, Julie. The influencer being the key person's audience you're trying to attract. If you're providing them with value, chances are they're going to give you an audience. So that's, in my opinion, way more effective than online, which is really hard to do nowadays. I know some of you have tried ads, and it's tough. It's a tough market to break into. There's a lot of people doing it, so it's hard to really niche down. So what I would suggest is like after accounting season's done, maybe you partner with an accountant who invites all his self-employed clients and you do a self-employed presentation. That to me, that is way more effective, sometimes more time consuming, but also yes, I will share the recording. Thanks, Gabrielle. Also a great way, use of your time and obviously limited funds. You don't really need money to do that, right? You just have to have a joint collaboration. So I know most of us think of ads when it comes to this, but that, in my opinion, has been difficult to retain. When we did the first time homebuyer webinar, that was kind of a flop. That was all through ads. And we originally had 20 people sign up, which was a great turnout for the space we had, but a lot of cancels, right? So versus if people already knew me and already knew that realtor, and that's where that list came from, they'd be more inclined to show up. There's that personal trust, a little bit more commitment there. So that's definitely what I think when I'm promoting, is not like sending out postcards, but more so collaborating with the right person and the right audience is key. Hey, prepare for technical glitches. This is key, especially if it's a webinar, but even if it's a seminar, because all of a sudden you get to your seminar, you're in person, you're ready, you did a pep talk in the bathroom, and you go and the presentation doesn't work. And you're like, oh my God, I memorized everything off of my presentation. What am I gonna do? So prepare for these things happen, right? So all of a sudden you're doing your webinar and you can't screen record, or you can't, I don't know, it really depends. When I did the launch webinar, I was using a different software called OBS, which I'll get to. We can maybe do like a different webinar on expert webinars, but OBS lets you live stream to YouTube. And while it was the first time I used it, you guys were all on the call and you're like, I can't see your screen. I can only see part of your screen. And I was like, what? So I literally had to stop the recording and go figure out what was happening, because I had no idea. I was like, hey, hold on, guys. And I wasted, 10 minutes there. So you have to expect that glitches will happen, or at least be prepared for them. And when they do happen, guys, brush it off. Be like, hey, I'll be back in 5 minutes and we'll hopefully have this fixed. And if not, move up, keep moving. Be like, okay, I don't have my presentation behind me. You're in a seminar and you're probably freaking out. Be like, hey guys, I'm going to roll through this as quickly as possible. And you know what ends up happening in those cases is you'll likely connect more with your audience, because you're going to rely on questions and answers, a little bit more back and forth. Do you guys have any more questions for me? And all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, that went better than I thought, right? So prepare for them. If they happen, you'll be ready, and hopefully just brush it off. Mobile access, this is important. Most of us as mortgage brokers work from our computer. I would imagine most of you are joining from your computer, the odd person joining from their phone. That said, when you're targeting first-time home buyers or people who might just be sitting on their couch listening to your webinar, be prepared to have a mobile-friendly version. That said, most of them come with mobile-friendly, right? So you shouldn't have to worry about it too much. But if you are doing through Google or Zoom or a different platform that requires an app to sign in, make sure that you make that part of your process for joining the webinar. If you're sending out an automated text message saying, hey, if you're joining from your mobile phone, make sure you download Google Meet. This will save you time before the webinar starts. Or make sure you download Zoom. Because what happens is, because I don't use Zoom, anytime somebody sends me a Zoom request and I do join from my phone, I have to download the freaking app again. So just keep that in mind, that mobile users will have that extra step. So if they're joining right at 10 o'clock or on the hour, they're going to have to download an app and be 5 minutes late, or they're all of a sudden they're frustrated and they don't join because they're like, I had to download an app. So if that is a part of your process, be prepared for mobile usage, right? Rehearse, we talked about this a little bit, but my first couple webinars, I would say Canva does allow you to have a notes section, which is really nice. I don't have mine up because I don't have notes, but it has a note section and a presenter and a viewer view, which is really slick. And if you remind me after, I'll show you guys what this looks like. But what's nice is about the presenter mode is, let's say I had it on this screen and I was talking to you guys with my presenter mode, and on the other side was actually the screen I was sharing. That was what you guys could see. You wouldn't actually see my notes. So I can go through everything and be confident that I'm not missing anything. So especially when you're new to webinars or seminars, this is nice to have in front of you to kind of keep with that flow. That said, you don't have to use it. Canva is my favorite for a reason. They make it really easy. So we can definitely explore that if one of you guys wants to jot that down and see it after. I'm happy to show you guys what this webinar itself, this presentation looks like in Canva. And the other cool thing about Canva, you'd think I'd be sponsored. I'm just a big supporter, is you don't have, a lot of people are like, oh, I downloaded the PDF and I don't know how to share it. And I brought a USB to my thing. And I'm like, you use a USB, it's 2024. So what you can do with Canva is it has a presentation link. So you can actually just share the link to your realtor or to whoever's going to have the computer, have it ready on your phone or your email in case they lose a link. And this is what pops up, this presentation that you guys are seeing. So it's nice in the sense nobody has to have Canva to see the link. They can just use the link to see the webinar. So that's what we've done in the past with our in-person seminars. And then obviously webinars, you can just share your screen. But if you're sharing it back and forth, that's a really great way to do it. You don't have to share your PowerPoint PDFs or anything like that anymore. This is a pretty modern way of doing it that really simplifies the process. Foster post-webinar engagement. So again, this is once you're ready to really commit to the whole webinar thing and you're going to get a software that has, drip campaigns and interactions with your clients after. So a good way to have post-webinar engagement is like a survey that goes out after the webinar. It's like, hey guys, how did it go? What did you like it? Did you dislike it? Is there something I missed? Something I went over? Something that was not important? We want to go over the good and the bad, of course, so that as you continue to do these webinars, hopefully you can record one that's perfect and use that in different campaigns later, right? So post webinar is important. You worked so hard to gather their emails. You created this beautiful landing page. You did your webinar. Now what are you going to do? You need to turn this person into a client, right? So you're definitely going to want to have a campaign that checks in with them once in a while. If it's first time home buyer related, how is your down payment savings going? This is, programs that are available. Those are all things that can be pre-built. So once we hit end on this webinar, on this date and time, this event, let's call it, they'll land into a drip campaign. So that's really, really important if you're going to foster that relationship and try to connect with them afterwards so that you can turn that into a lead. And don't forget about your realtors. You may want to have a post-drip campaign for whoever is joining the webinar with you, right? Like, how did we do? You want to do another one? And if it's not automated, don't worry about it. Write down a checklist of things you want to do after your webinar. I want to reach out to my realtor and brainstorm what we could have done better and what we did that was good, or what other topics could we do? Just make sure that there's something that happens after. It's not like, thanks for joining my webinar, see you later, right? So we want to have something there. This is just talks about, I basically said all this already. So you guys have talked too much, but you do want to have your recorded version and some follow-up emails. We'll provide you with a few examples and our snapshot, which we'll share with everyone who wants it. But essentially, yeah, there's some questions here that are common. What is a webinar? How to create a webinar? We talked about how to plan for a webinar and the ideal duration. I would say the ideal duration, prepare for an hour by the test, especially if it's co-hosted with somebody, because by the time you go back and forth, share screens, maybe you can't figure out how to share screens and you have a glitch, you'll probably be an hour. But if you do want to create shorter ones that are more like attention grabbing, and then it's like, let's book a discovery call, then you can definitely do that. But before I share my screen with other things, why don't we do like a Q&A and see if you guys have any questions based on what we went over. And you can just unmute yourself if you do. Or if you're shy, you could put it in the chat. I see Wanda's leaving. And Peter asked about the page being built in My Broker Pro.
I have a quick comment about, how you were saying about the mobile version.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing to do with this, but yesterday I was supposed to be on a chip mortgage webinar, and they were using GoToMeeting, which I don't see so often. And the funny thing is, I logged in on my computer and it said, okay, you're in, you'll be connected as soon as the host joins. And about 15 minutes in, I'm like, man, they're having some bad technical glitches or something. So I just had to try it on my phone, and the webinar had already started.
Yeah.
So, the software that you choose, I guess, is really important. I mean, Google seems so reliable. It's,
Yeah.
I myself am interested in learning more about that, but that's all I had to say.
Honestly, great feedback, Peter, because that's so true. I can't remember what webinar it was for me as well, but I needed a code and this and that. And then by the time I was just like, hey, I'm done. I didn't end up joining. So hopefully you guys didn't feel that way when you joined mine. And if you do, provide that feedback, right? If your client comes in and says, oh, I really had a hard time getting into the meeting. Why? Because that's like trying to access somebody's website and it doesn't work. You're like, hey, I just won't call them, right?
Yep.
Thanks, Kevin. So definitely the software you use is key to part of your success. It's just one piece of the puzzle, right? So big piece of the puzzle. A lot of them now are moving, Google Meet and Zoom, and a couple of them just have a web-based, like no app required, which is kind of key. If the person doesn't have Google Meet, for them to just click and join the meeting, that's awesome. They might not be familiar with the platform, but they don't have to download a web app or whatever. That's kind of nice, I think. So yeah, great info there. If you guys are wanting to share, that's kind of the end of the presentation, but I will share a couple things with, first I'll share Google Meet, and then I'll share what the landing pages and stuff look like inside My Broker Pro. If you guys are interested in that, we'll send out an email and just say who wants one, and you just say yes, and it's free and you get it. And I was going to show you guys Canva as well. So let's start with this. If you use Google Meet and you are afraid of people not showing up and you don't want others to see the lack of people showing up, or maybe you just want it to be private. Maybe you're like, hey, you're, hosting something to other brokers to join, and you don't want them to know that other people are thinking about leaving a brokerage, or, something a little bit more confidential. You would do in Google Meet anyways, because like I said, I'm not familiar with Zoom. You would schedule in your Google Calendar. And then it opens this up. You'd obviously fill this out as you would per normal. Google does have a webinar software, but to do that, you have to be in the enterprise package. And who can afford that, Most of us just have the business starter or whatever the other, slightly upgraded versions are, but the enterprise is, that's pretty excessive. I think that's more for like schools and stuff like that. But so a way around that is to fill out all this information and add, like I said, I manually added my guest the very first time in here and submitted the invite, updated the invite every time. You can certainly do that through our software. You won't have to, but if you're just going to do kind of the old school, easy way to start your first few webinars, definitely just do it that way. It's foolproof. It adds it to their calendar automatically. You don't have to worry about buying anything. This allows you guys to invite others. So if you were like, hey, I know another broker that could like this, when you got my meeting invite, you would have been able to go inside your calendar and invite others to the meeting. See guest lists. If you guys could see everybody who was in the Google meeting. If I didn't want you guys to, I would just unclick that. And then technically, I haven't tested this, but from what I read, you wouldn't be able to see who's in the meeting either. So try before you buy, like I said. In this case, try before you do your actual webinar. Invite a friend, try a different email address of yours or whatever, and just test and see what it actually looks like on the user end of things. But that's a great way to do that. Before we go to My Broker Pro, I will show you guys Canva. To do this feature, I'd probably recommend Canva Pro. See, I was looking at different slides that I liked, right? And I ended up choosing this one. It was different colors. My assistant changed the colors, but there are so many. I'll show you that before we dive into presentations. You can type in what kind of themes you want and go from there. But there's hundreds, if not thousands, of different webinars you can pick from. All the pages are going to be done for you. All you have to do is change the colors. I like to say pick something that's pretty bold, that's going to stand out, and go from there. But creating something like this for you would take hours. So why bother? Have Canva do it for you. Change this to whatever title you want. If you want AI to do it, I think you would do create presentation about first time. Oops. I haven't done this in a while. I think there'd be an AI mock-up here, magic design. There you go. You just type in what you want and it'll actually create it for you. I have to say that they're pretty okay. I wouldn't say they're like amazing, but they get you halfway there. You know, they get you a presentation. They talk about welcoming, advice, guide for some buyers, and then of course you have to edit this to match your style, match your message, add some feature stuff in there. If you're looking for already made templates, we have a ton of those for sale, for purchase, that you can buy. I think we have 8 that you can buy. But let's go into my presentation for today. Where are you? How to host a webinar. Okay, so this is what it looks like if I hadn't shared my whole screen or went into presenter mode. As soon as I went into presenter mode, it changed it to take over that whole screen. So you couldn't see any of my other tabs or anything like that. Presenter mode is what you're going to do if you're like, especially in a seminar, you're going to share that whole screen, right? Here's your notes section where you can add your notes. And when you go to share and you do present, there's presenter view. So if you did presenter view, you can see the little notes tab. This is just a preview, would show up on your screen. So you would now have 2 screens that open up that look identical, but one will be one that you're looking at and one will be the one you're sharing your screen with. So make sure you share the right screen. And yours will have all your notes, which is really great. No need to do anything fancy there. Autoplay is great, but I recommend you time yourself. So timer. So you can do a timer when you're doing your practicing, like we recommended. And then that way you'd see how this says 5 seconds, 5 seconds, 5 seconds. So if you were to time yourself how long it took you to go through, let's say the first page of me talking about myself, that took Sarah 5 minutes. You could adjust the time here, edit timing, or time yourself practicing and be like, okay, that took me 7 minutes. So now you can change this to 7 minutes. And then when you do autoplay, what's nice about that is you don't have to worry about changing the screen. So that'll be particularly good in a in-person setting as well. Or if you're nervous about like using all the technology and you're like, I don't want to like worry about hitting the buttons, even though Canva does make it user-friendly, you just click next, but that would be a good use case for that. The timer is just another great way to be like, how long is this presentation going to take me? Where do I need to cut down on my babbling or increase a certain slide or whatever, right? So utilize these functions to your extent and then adjust the timing up here. Okay. You can lock screens is a great thing to do if you're going to share the template with your realtor. You don't want them to steal your content that took you hours to create, so that they hopefully they don't do this to you, but like go use it with somebody else, right? You want to lock a lot of that. But my favorite part, collaboration link. This one is great for anyone can view. So from here, you copy your link. And now you can share. They won't be able to edit. And that just brings them either into their Canva. If they don't have a Canva, it will just open up a link, like a web link. So it's actually, this is what we use, the share link to, let me just make sure it's that one actually. Yeah, it is. Design. You can see there's a ton of other stuff you can do here. But yeah, the template link would give them access to be able to edit the templates. That's what I share with you guys. But if you do the link that I just and view only, then they'll only be able to see it. And if they don't have a Canva account, that's perfectly fine. It'll just show them the presentation, which is awesome. So those are some key features about the presenter mode that I quite like in Canva. And I think a pretty underused, because a lot of people will ask me how to download their presentation. I'm like, oh, you don't have to. If you needed to download the PDF for some reason, if you're still using a USB, ask yourself why you're using a USB. And then if you still need to, you can download your PDFs from here and put it on your USB file. But definitely utilize what's nice. This my presentation doesn't have like a ton of graphics, but if yours had like some cool like, you know, drifting in and all that, you can't see that on a PDF, but you would be able to see that. If you do need help, we're here to help. We've got a big team now that's obviously here to support that and help you get integrated with the system. And once you know how to do it,
it's like going to an amusement park. There's bells and whistles and lights, but you think about the carnies that work in an amusement park. They filter all that. Like, so when I first came on here, I was like, oh, there's a lot. Yesterday, even I went into it and I was like, oh wow, I didn't realize I could do that. That's cool.